Hello everybody, and welcome to another class guide and review. This time is going to be for the newly released Lightcaster class. The Lightcaster class is pretty long awaited, being originally talked about back in September of 2016 with Aranax's birthday and the release of the new evolved and enchanted Lightcaster armors. Now, January 2017 has come around and we have finally received the class to go along with that armor. This class will be seasonal with Aranax's birthday. It will not be going rare. So if you see this video at some time in the future and you cannot obtain this class, don't worry, it will come back. However, it is seasonal. You obtain it as of right now by going to the tabs, the shops tab in the menu, and clicking on the evolved Lightcaster armor. You buy this armor for 1000 ACs, and this grants you access to the Lightcaster class shop. I cannot currently get in there because I don't have the Lightcaster armor. I had the enchanted Lightcaster armor that I purchased back in September. I can redeem that and get the Lightcaster class for free. So, this class currently, for people who have bought the Lightcaster armor, only cost 1000 ACs. I do not know how it will be in the future. If in September it will be bumped up to 2000 ACs, or if you will still be able to get it for 1000 ACs. However, with how good this class is, I would recommend getting it, whether it is 1k ACs or 2k ACs. But if you can obtain it for 1k ACs within the next few weeks, I would highly recommend it because this class is very good. So let's talk about the enhancements. For the enhancements on this class, we have my normal testing that I do for pure damage output testing. This is time to kill red dragon in seconds, stable weapon, no on enhancements, as to reduce as many variables as possible. Each of these times is the top 3 times from 10 runs each. As you can see here, Full Wizard has bypassed Full Luck. Although I've seen some people saying that Full Luck beats out Full Wizard, I found this to be an anomaly. I have found that Full Wizard is better in general and is far better on average. If you look at the numbers on paper, or if you look at theoretical numbers, or if you just take one-off examples of it killing Red Dragon in like 15 seconds, then yes, Luck can beat out Wizard. However, that basically requires you to crit every ability, every auto attack, and every skill you use on this class for the entire fight. You can't miss any, you can't dodge any, and that's just not practical, and that's not repeatable. And so while Full Luck can beat out Full Wizard in some one-off corner case scenarios, on average, Full Wizard will be far better on the whole. 3 Wiz 1 Luck also came pretty close behind Full Wizard. And I do not know, and I did not feel a tangible difference in the amount of mana that I had between the Full Wizard and the 3 Wizard 1 Luck test. Normally the reason that you run 3 Wizard 1 Luck is for the extra mana generation that critting more often will give you, but without the average damage loss that you are losing by going Full Luck. Normally here would be the farming test results. However, this class is clearly not a farming class, having no multi-target damage, and while its cooldowns are lower and it can attack from range, meaning it is not the worst soloing class at farming, it is not a farming class, and almost any other farming class is going to beat this out in a significant and meaningful way. So there's really not a lot of reason to use this on farming over anything else that you could possibly get. Now let's get into the abilities themselves. This class does not have a unique auto attack effect. Some of the classes we've been looking at recently have had unique auto attack effects. This is not one of them. It is a normal stock auto attack with a 2.0 attack speed and 100% weapon damage. So now let's get into the first ability on this class. The first ability on the class is Lingering Light. It costs 10 mana on a 4-second cooldown. Lingering Light deals moderate damage to the enemy. It's not a lot, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of a few hundred, and it applies a stacking debuff to the target, making them take 3% more damage. This stacks up to 50 times, lasting for 8 seconds. Every new stack applied resets the timer. This is a pretty good ability, any damage stacking effect that you can get is always going to be very beneficial. There are pros and cons to applying the debuff to the opponent rather than applying a buff to yourself. Applying a debuff to the opponent makes this feel better as a support class, because now you're increasing how much damage they take. And this is important if you have multiple people fighting with you. If you're soloing, it's functionally the same thing, whether the debuff is applied to you or to the target. For PvP, if you're doing something like Bloodroot Brawl, or if you're trying to farm with this class, if you could apply the buff to yourself, this would mean that you could stack the buff and carry it between monsters or people that you're fighting. So there are different ups and downs and pros and cons to whether you apply a buff to yourself or a debuff to the opponent, but I think that on the whole, on average, applying the debuff to the opponent is better because it does make it better as a support class. And as we've seen, things like Stonecrusher and Archpaladin are very highly favored in the community because of their ability to not just solo, but to also be competent support classes. Okay, so next up is Light Blast. Light Blast costs 20 mana on a 3-second cooldown. Light Blast applies pretty reasonable damage to the target, and it cannot crit and must hit. This clause is pretty important. Although it does reduce the overall damage this attack can do, the cannot miss part is very relevant in PvP. The ability itself applies a stacking debuff to the target, decreasing their chance to hit by 5%. This ability stacks up to 5 times on a 6-second timer, each new stack refreshing that timer. Overall, you can reduce a target's chance to hit by 25% with this. This is not incredible. This is not like Legion Blade Master or some of the other really high dodge chance based classes that are going to be reducing your chance to hit by like 80% and just be able to do whatever they want for that time, effectively stunning you. But it is a chance to hit reduction, which is always great for PvP, and the fact that it cannot miss also makes the skill much better in PvP when you are fighting other dodge chance based classes that are going to try to reduce your chance to hit them, because you know for sure that this ability will hit regardless of what they're doing. This ability is more applicable in PvP. When you're farming, when you're soloing, when you're trying to do other stuff, this ability is not going to be used as often because it does cost 20 mana. It is slightly more expensive, being on par with your heal for not that much damage, and with a bonus effect that really is not applicable to a lot of bosses. However, if you're fighting a boss that is hitting a little bit harder than you would like, you can use Light Blast if they can be affected by it. Some bosses are not affected by debuffs like this. But if the boss can be affected by debuffs like this and they're hitting a little harder than you were expecting, you can use Light Blast to try and reduce the amount of damage that you're taking. If you can stack it up to full, it's going to theoretically reduce how much damage you're taking by a fourth, which is never a bad thing. But as I've said, not all bosses can be affected by debuffs like this. But if you're fighting a boss that can, and you need to reduce how much damage you're taking, as well as getting a little bit of extra damage, you can use this. But overall, I tend not to use this ability in my normal soloing rotation very much. And now we move on to Illuminate. Illuminate is your fourth ability and is your heal. Illuminate costs 20 mana on a 12-second cooldown. Illuminate does quite a few things, and I'm going to go through them in a little bit of a weird order. First off, Illuminate applies a massive buff to yourself, buffing your flat damage increase, crit damage, crit chance, hit chance, dodge chance, haste, and damage resistance, all by 15% for 12 seconds. This buff cannot stack, although reapplying the buff to yourself will reset the 12-second timer on it. This spell also has a heal that will heal you and up to 6 allies for 300% of your spell damage. This ability can crit, so your heal on this can crit. Base, this is not going to be healing by an incredible amount. Normally it's going to be healing for a little under 1,000, sometimes around 1,000, which is better than Glacial Berserker, which we looked at last week, being significantly less mana on a lower cooldown, with a better effect to it, once again showing that Glacial Berserker's heal is awful. But, that aside, this heal is not incredibly powerful. This is not the greatest heal I've ever seen. The fact that it applies to up to 6 targets, when a lot of heals apply to up to 4 targets or 3 targets, is nice. It can heal far more people if you're doing something like Blood or Brawl and you've got a bunch of people stacked in a room. But on average, and especially if you're soloing, that's not going to matter. But what makes this ability incredible is the fact that it gives you all of those buffs. It gives you an incredible amount of benefit for it. Dodge chance, crit damage, flat damage increase, haste, damage resistance. You push this button and you become significantly more powerful. You press this button and your class receives larger than a 15% damage increase. It's kind of hard to quantify exactly how much damage increase you get from this because there is some variance between how much damage an ability is doing and whether you're critting or not and all that stuff. But it is, from what I have tested, close to a 20% damage increase over having this ability applied and having this buff on over not having the ability applied. That is a massive damage increase and a very tangible damage increase on average. This effect was actually buffed from the testing version that we received a few days ago. Originally, this was an 8% buff to all of these abilities, but when it went live, became a 15% buff to all abilities with no other effects changed. So this ability is incredibly powerful. And while this ability does not stack, it should not, and would be ridiculously game-breaking if it could stack. This effect you want to make sure that you can keep up at all times. Try and keep this buff applied at all times when you are playing. Farming, soloing, PvP, whatever you're doing, keep this buff up at all times, because this buff is ridiculously powerful. Now on to our final ability, Burned by Light. Burned by Light costs 35 mana on a 15-second cooldown. Burned by Light does a large amount of damage to a single target, hitting for somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 5k on a crit. Once you're buffed, this can even hit upwards of 8 or even 9k I've seen it hit for on a crit. Then, it deals 700% of your spell damage over the next 10 seconds as a dot. Meaning that this ability will, in total, I have seen hit for, at the maximum, something like 12k, and at the minimum, around 4k. And this is for only 35 mana on a 15-second cooldown. And the wideness of that damage spread, it normally comes down to whether you got a crit or not. However, with the high crit chance that this class already has, as well as once you add in the extra buffs that you get from Illuminate, this class is going to be critting pretty often and pretty consistently. And with the high crit damage that it gets, you are going to be doing incredible amounts of damage with this 5th ability. And at such a low cooldown for such a low mana cost, this is one of the most efficient damage spells in the game. So now we're going to move on to the passives. Your 2 rank 4 passives are Mentally Bright and Speed of Light. Mentally Bright increases your intellect by 15%, and Speed of Light increases your haste by 15%. Pretty simple, both of these are just damage increases. Your rank 10 passive, and this class does have a rank 10 passive, is Power of the Sun. This is a flat 15% damage increase. Not a proc, no extra chances, just a 15% damage increase for all damage output. This is both PvP and PvE, and is incredibly powerful. So overall, this class has incredibly good abilities. All of the cooldowns on this are very low. The highest cooldown on this class being 15 seconds on Burned by Light. This is a very good ability, doing a lot of damage and hitting very hard on a very low cooldown for a pretty low mana cost. And honestly, in my personal opinion, and I hate to say it after how hard I ragged on Glacial Berserker last review, class is overpowered. It does too much damage for a soloing class. That if they wanted to make this a PvP class, I can understand that. But many of the PvP classes are luck-based, are very random. There are a lot of very random chance, dodge-based, and kind of require things to go their way if they want to do well. They're very big boom or bust classes. They win or lose dramatically. Big, high amounts of burst damage. And this class has that. That when you push this button, you can just destroy something. However, it also has very good, consistent damage. Smooth damage. because its cooldowns are so low. Its haste is so high. You have a 30% haste buff once you've applied Illuminate. This allows you to spam your abilities very, very quickly, to very quickly stack up Lingering Light, allowing you to get a massive damage boost to this character very easily. This class can do ludicrous amounts of damage, some of the highest that I have ever seen out of a soloing class. And I'm calling it a soloing class and not just a PvP class because it can solo. Because part of the thing that makes this class durable, that makes it tanky, is Light Blast and Illuminate. While Light Blast can reduce your target's hit chance, Illuminate can increase your hit chance and increase your dodge chance, both of these helping you be more durable. As I've said, this class reduces a lot of its damage taken by increasing its chance to dodge attacks. But even with that being the case, this class can still pretty easily solo Blood Titan. And, as many of you know, Blood Titan cannot miss. Blood Titan is not affected by stuns, it's not affected by hit chance reduction, dodge, it's not affected by any of that stuff. That you really cannot mess with Blood Titan. Blood Titan will hit you every time, all the time. And the only way to reduce that damage is to either heal it back or reduce how much damage he's doing to you. Through something like Stone Crusher or Arch Paladin, they can just flat up reduce how much damage you're taking. Other than that, you're going to get hit by it every time, always, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so, for this class, this is a worst case scenario. Blood Titan is a worst case scenario for tanking and for soloing. However, it can still do it, and with plenty of health and mana to spare. Class is incredibly, incredibly powerful. It does incredible amounts of damage, some of the highest damage I have ever seen out of a soloing class. Yes, there are PvP classes and stuff that can hit in the millions of damage, in the tens of thousands, but those classes are outliers. They're weird corner case things where maybe you get this, you have to do a lot of work and get some setup and maybe get some help from people and all, then I can get this million damage crit. But under normal circumstances, every time I'm pushing this ability, I'm hitting for thousands of damage on a low cooldown. Every time. No question about it. And that cannot be said for many of these other classes that claim to do highest damage. That some of them are more consistent than others, I know that. However, this class does some of the highest damage consistently, and that's what makes this very powerful. Now we're going to get on to the Blood Titan test, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the soloing aspect of this class. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the soloing aspect of this class, and the rotation that I'm going to use when I'm normally soloing and when I'm normally doing my day-to-day fighting with this class. PvP is a whole different ball of wax, but with soloing, this is the way that I normally play the fight. Before the fight starts, just before I pull the mob, I will use my 4. I will apply Illuminate, just to get the extra buff effect to it. It increases my hit chance, so I'm less likely to miss my other abilities, and increases my crit chance, crit damage, and flat damage increased, all of these being very powerful. The damage resistance, as well as the haste, are all very beneficial. Don't get that wrong, but the immediate effects that we're looking to be important right now are the damage increasing ones. So, before the fight starts, I'm going to hit my 4, and then I'm immediately going to use 5, as quick as I can. As soon as I see the icon come back around, I'm going to hit 5. This should do a massive amount of damage to the target right away. Something like Blood Titan with almost 200,000 health won't really care that much. That amount of damage will not be super noticeable, but it is a very large amount of damage. I'm going to immediately hit 5, and then immediately hit 2, and I'm going to start stacking 2 as fast as I can, as often as I can. And for the entire rest of the fight, you're going to see me hitting 2 and 5 on cooldown. This is my rotation. It's basically 2 and 5 on cooldown. Every time they're up, I'm hitting them. And when I need to, I will hit 4 in order to refresh the buff. I will use it as a heal. However, the cooldown on this is so low that I can afford to simply spam it and use it as a buff first and as a heal second, because the mana and cooldown on it is simply so low, I don't have to worry about using it and then it not being up for when I take damage. With some abilities and some classes, the heal cooldown is longer, the heal mana cost is longer, and you have to be careful about how quickly and how often you're using your heal for its bonus effect. Because if you use it now, maybe it's not up later, and maybe you're wasting that extra health. But in this class, the benefit that you're receiving, the buff that you're receiving is so beneficial, and the cooldown and mana cost on it is so low that you do not need to make that trade-off. You can simply get both and just spam the ability and use it whenever you need to simply refresh the buff and not just for healing. So as you guys could see, that was a pretty easy fight. I was really not in any danger. The video may be too sped up for you guys to see this, but I was using 2 and 5 on cooldown, and I was not hitting 4 on cooldown, and I was not touching 3 at all, because it's useless here. For some bosses, it is nice, it can be nice to help reduce their damage. For Blood Titan, he's not affected by hit chance reduction anyway, so it's useless to use it. Its damage is not enough to really make a meaningful difference in the speed of the fight. Well, yes, it would speed it up some. So, as we go into the Ultra fight, this is going to be a lot more difficult, as Ultra hits significantly harder, and because we have no way to reduce its hit chance or dodge, we're probably going to die pretty quickly, as this class is nowhere near as tanky as some of the other soloing classes like Arch Paladin, Stone Crusher, or Oracle, who could normally make this fight much easier with their natural durability and damage reduction. Whereas unfortunately, Lightcaster doesn't have much of that, and we're simply flying on how powerful our heal is and by the minor damage reduction that we can get from our 4. So, let's get into the fight, and I'll see you guys after I'm done. Okay, so there we go. We died. Unfortunately, we didn't get a crit heal. I was kind of banking on getting a crit heal once or twice in there to help me last a little bit longer. Almost every heal that I used there was not a crit, meaning that it was only hitting for like 800 to 900, 1000 at the max. But it just goes to show you that even with this class being a dodge chance based tank and using dodge as a way to significantly reduce how much damage it's taking, it can still handle a boss like Blood Titan with some level of competency. So with all that out of the way, we're now going to move into the P section as I talk about PvPing with this class and a little bit more in depth on that. For PvP for Lightcaster, I will start the fight by immediately using Burn by Light. It does such substantial damage as well as leaving a DOT on the target that normally if this ability lands, you can either one-shot them or leave them with less than 500 HP. If the fight continues and you did not one-shot them, I will apply Illuminate to buff myself as well as heal any damage that we did to each other in the initial burst damage at the start of the fight. I will then start stacking Light Blast, not Lingering Light. Lingering Light, while the damage increase from it is sweet, it is unfortunately not as useful in PvP as Light Blast is. And in this downtime between Burned by Lights, this is the most important time where you need to be watching your mana. If you're spamming too hard and using too many of your abilities, you may run yourself too low on mana, so you cannot cast Burned by Light again once it comes back off of cooldown. And being able to cast Burned by Light for the big chunk damage is normally what's going to win you a match, as well as Light Blast, reducing the target's chance to hit you, as well as having a guaranteed hit, meaning that you will always be hitting through dodge chance-based classes. I will remember to be stacking Illuminate whenever I can, not just for the heal, but also to try to keep up the buff. It is very, very important in PvP to never let the Illuminate buff fall off, because you will suddenly be dealing much less damage and taking much more damage than you would otherwise. Okay guys, so here we are at my house to do the wrap up and conclusion section on the Lightcaster class that has recently released. Lightcaster overall is incredibly powerful. Serving as a very good support, soloing, and PvP class. While its multi-target damage is basically non-existent, making it less ideal for things like Bloodroot Brawl, and while it doesn't have as high of a dodge chance as some of the other PvP classes that we have seen, once again, making it a little bit worse for things like Bloodroot Brawl, and making it better and worse in certain situations for some bosses. As a whole, this class is incredibly powerful, and if you can pick this up for the mere 1000 ACs that they're currently asking for the armor, I highly recommend you do it. As this class is not rare, it is seasonal, it will be coming back in the future. And while we do not know what the cost will be like in the future, what the availability will be like, and how it will be obtained, if you are seeing this down the road, I would still highly recommend picking this class up, because barring any nerfs or buffs that this class may receive, in its current state, this class is incredibly powerful, and in my mind, ranks up there with some of the top soloing classes in the game. This class, for me, can compete with Archpaladin, Stonecrusher, and Oracle, which, for me personally, are my top 3 soloing classes that I have. Lightcaster does fight for a spot in the top 3 soloing classes that I own. And considering the competition that it has with Darkblood Storm King, Shaman, Stonecrusher, Archpaladin, Oracle, it has some pretty tough competition. Overall, I would recommend getting this class. Very good. It's very good in general, but very, very good at some of its specific jobs. While it is not able to take out some of these bosses that are going to be hitting incredibly hard, doing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 1000 damage, because it does not have the straight up damage reduction that some classes like Stonecrusher and Archpaladin are wielding to help them survive in those. This class is still very durable and is still very powerful, and can do very high amounts of damage. Mean that if you're somebody who is farming bosses, you're farming for 1% drops or very low drop rates, this is going to be a very good option for you, because its time to kill those bosses is going to be very low when compared to many of the other soloing classes, meaning that in the same amount of time, you can get in significantly more kills, allowing you to farm for those items that much faster. So, with all that being said, I want to thank you guys for coming. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching today's video. If you guys liked the video, disliked the video, feel like leaving a comment, please leave that all below. If you guys enjoy this content and want to see anything else from me, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel to get updates on anything else that I do, whether it be streams, videos, or otherwise. And with that being said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.